Hi, Jack Lifton here, and this morning I'm very pleased to be speaking with Rowena Smith, the Managing Director of Australian Strategic Mineral. Good morning, Rowena.
Good morning, Jack.
Oh, I just remembered it's good evening for you because that's good morning for me.
It is. Oh. It is evening here.
Well, we last spoke at PDAC in Toronto a few months ago, not so long ago, and I was very impressed by your business model and how you're moving along it, because in my opinion, you're actually the furthest advanced rare earth company in Australia. There's a lot of let's say, one larger and many other wannabes, but you're really moving along and you've got the right business model. So what I'd like to ask you is, where do you stand in your operation of producing metals and alloys? I'm particularly interested in that. So can you tell us about that?
Indeed. Well, our metals facility is in South Korea, and we have been in production there making light rare earth metals since 2022. We first started delivering product to customer in September of 22. And then from that point, that was originally that light rare earth metal, but then we've also developed the NdFeB alloy, the strip alloy that is that specialist alloy that is the feedstock for the magnet producers. And the first of the customers that we announced on that are in the US, but we've been progressing with a number of prospective customers through the product validation process. And I'm very pleased to say, since we last spoke, Jack, that we have now sent commercial samples, which is the very last step in those product validation processes. We've sent large commercial samples to 3 different customers just in recent weeks, 1 in Europe and 2 in Korea. So we're very pleased that we're getting towards the end of those processes, and we'll be able to move into sales for those customers in the coming year.
Well, I've spent too much time in Global 1000 companies to ask you to identify your customers. I know you can't. Not that you don't want to, but they would be very unhappy. Okay, but you've actually told me something very interesting, because you're telling me that there are magnet makers in Europe and Korea who are well along in getting into production again. And right now, we really don't have too many of those. So, like, in fact, you've just increased my understanding of the Asian magnet market by about 100%, because I didn't know there were 2 Korean companies, doing it. So thank you. Also, you are the only company I know in the Western world who is doing what you're talking about. Now, let me say something. You're telling me you're delivering strip cast alloy to samples to prospective customers. Okay.
Absolutely, we are. And the customers that we're working with in Korea are emerging magnet producers, so they're not in production yet, but we're working with them as they are establishing their facilities. The customers, so some of the customers we're working with are established, and others are we're working with them to support their startup processes. And that includes in all jurisdictions. We've got examples of that in the States as well. But I think what's exciting about this is that we are seeing businesses stepping into the magnet production. And, we are positioned very strongly to actually know what it is that's going on in the industry, because there are so few businesses that are producing the metals that we are one of the obvious places that people come to talk to as they're working through their own processes. So it puts us in a unique position to have the intelligence around who's working on what, which, is terrific for us.
Well, I want to correct you on one thing. You're the only company at that level, not just one of them. Okay, if we just take China off the board, then ASM is leagues ahead of everyone else in the rare space. And I want to emphasize something. I realize you're not yet mining and refining, but you've got a very big interest from the Australian and the American and Canadian government on financing the core mine of your company. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's exciting to see the downstream part of this supply chain starting to move. But it will only be as strong as it can access feed. And, I've said this before, these businesses will only grow, the metals and magnets businesses, if we invest in projects like our project in Dubbo in New South Wales, so that there is actually feed of oxides to come into these metals facilities. So we have got a project that is extremely advanced. It's construction ready, and funding is a critical path for us. And when we spoke in March, I said then, we're really focused on talking with government about accessing some of the government funds to be able to facilitate getting Dubbo into production. So it's really exciting. Just in the last few weeks, we have had a letter of interest that we've announced from US EXIM for $600 million US for the construction phase of that Dubbo project. We have awarded a contract for the final piece of engineering work to Bechtel Engineering. And with it, we got an accompanying additional letter of interest from US EXIM for a further up to $32 million US to help in that final piece of engineering work. And then more recently, we got a letter of interest from the Canadian Export Credit Agency for $400 million for the construction phase of the Dubbo project. That's in Aussie currency. And all of that is in addition to the Australian Export Finance Credit Agency, who had already given us a letter of support for 200 million. So, we really are starting to get very, very strong signals from our Australian and North American governments for support for this project. And what we have immediately seen, as we anticipated, is that's just triggered stronger interest from other jurisdictions, as well as other engineering companies who are wanting to participate, as well as the offtake discussions that we had underway it's just triggered a stronger level of interest, which is great.
You hit on something that's so true. None of this is going to happen unless the supply chain's in place. And I keep telling people, it's not just the supply chain, it's the volume of ability, production ability of the supply chain. So the fact is, we're not going to be able to advance any faster than we can develop metal and alloy capacity for making magnets. Simple as that. If we don't buy metal and alloy from our friends in China, then we have to produce it ourselves. But this has been something we have not been doing. And what's interesting to me is that in the United States, it's been seen now to be very difficult to do this because we don't have the people. I'm 84, okay, and I'm not the oldest guy who's been involved in the rare earth magnet industry production. Okay, so and when they asked me at the Pentagon what they should do, I said visit the assisted care homes, the cemeteries, and the active retirees, and see if you can find enough people to put it together. Okay, and so I recommended they work with the Department of Health because those are the ones who know the people of my generation. And in any case, they thought that was, not funny. I said, it isn't funny. Okay. So the fact that you found this kind of talent and you've achieved it actually, you're the only one I know that's doing this at this time in the Western world. Okay, I'm not counting Japan because, in my opinion, Japan has outsourced almost all of its metal and alloy making to China. Okay, so you guys are it, Okay.
It's very, very exciting for us. And, you know, you're right. There's a lot of work to develop the capability in each step of this supply chain. You know, you talk about the expertise in metallization, in alloying, but, you know, equally magnet, as well as if you go upstream to separation and refining, these are all their own specialist IP. And so, you know, I think if we are going to establish this alternative supply chain rapidly, then you know, one of the ways to de-risk that is to work in partnership across that supply chain, not try to have one jurisdiction or one company trying to do all of that alone and simultaneously. But, you know, let's work together and see what we can do to establish one step and then leverage that for the next. So for us, we've gone out there and we've established that capability in metallization and alloying. It's then enabling us to work very closely with both the emerging magnet capability, but also in addition to our own project for oxides, it's also allowing us to work with other third-party oxide providers, and we're giving them a pathway to market as well. And what we've found in the discussions, particularly in the United States and Europe, is that there is very strong interest in us replicating that metals plant in their own local jurisdiction as that supply chain matures. And, you know, we are uniquely placed to be able to do that because we have got not just the design of the facility and the experience in building and commissioning it, but we've got the personnel, both the operational and technical personnel who can come and support the training of local talent to be able to bring them up that curve. So, you know, all of that's very, very important, but it's also an opportunity for, you know, if a magnet producer in the States, for instance, is trying to commission at the same time as the metals plant is being built alongside them and commissioning, you've just doubled the complexity of that process. If they can actually build their plant and commission it, sourcing from an established, capable, reliable supplier from Korea, and then as the supply chain grows, we can install the additional capacity locally. You know, that's a much safer way for us to be building this capacity in the supply chain. So they're the type of conversations that we're having.
Can you give us an idea of what your alloy production tonnage might be at the end of 2025 and 26?
Well, the design capacity of our facility in Korea is 3,600 tonne per annum of alloy. We've installed 600 tonne per annum of that at the moment, and we're in the process of you know, going through these product validations to then establish the sales to ramp up firstly to that 600 and beyond. And we'll install that additional capacity to take it to design as quickly as the market supports it. There is already a sort of a blueprint for how we would expand beyond that in Korea. And certainly if the market really supports it in Korea, then we would be very excited to do that. But similarly, we could just work to getting to the 3,600 tonne in Korea and then duplicate that capacity in another jurisdiction as another way of expansion. And that we've certainly got a lot of interest in.
Thank you very much, Rowena. And you don't need luck, you need money. And I'm hoping that comes to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good night.